Advanced English Arabic Learning Session 66. He'd rather play golf or shoot hoops than work. Heavy mists mantled the forested slopes. We decided to spring a surprise on them. Older rocks progressively outcrop on the plateau surface. Work such as theirs will help to elucidate this matter. The entrance gate was expertly hidden by a rock outcropping in the slope of the mountain. Underneath a rock outcropping, two men are taking refuge from the rain. Insider dealing has been roundly trounced. The moon becomes moon again and the bird returns to its perch. A gull perched on the rails. She perched on the side of the armchair. I was behind the wheel when you called me. Many soils have a topsoil layer that is more permeable than the clay subsoil. The shell is freely permeable to small gas molecules. The channel is impermeable to anions but is permeable to a diverse group of cations. The chef concocted pre-packaged meals and light lunches using homegrown ingredients. A frog's skin is permeable to water. I do not conclude that the delay undermines their credibility. That supports the proposition that they are concocting a story. Shove your feelings way down deep. We escaped by the skin of our teeth. To complete his tapestry of interwoven plots, the resolution had to be brilliantly contrived. The hinges of the door grated. He briefly tried his hand at furniture design and excels at contriving quirky contraptions. Peel and roughly grate the carrots. Keep the meaning obscure, and you keep the mystery intact. Haze is traditionally an atmospheric phenomenon in which dust obscures the clarity of the sky. A huge log fire was burning in the grate. Coercive population policies. This imparts a distinctive taste to the fermented barley mash from which the water of life is distilled. The stories of avarice and greed. The skim and cream are stored in dedicated storage silos until needed for batch production. The variation of replicate measurements. These findings have been replicated. Other adjunct therapies include immunotherapy. We should resort to entreaty and humble supplication. An adjunct professor of entomology. Do you demand something inferior in exchange for something superior? She began to skip down the path. For millennia the people along the Nile have depended entirely on its bounty. The younger girls were skipping rope. I am not convinced that there is any reason to alter or rescind the order made by the board. Thank you for getting me off the hook. Legal jargon. No casualties were reported and the chemical alert was eventually rescinded. A wild outburst of applause. During the spring new plants sprout but their fruits don't immediately ripen. A very dramatic outburst of neutrons. Keep in mind that shaving a hair from a mole is considered safe. She let out a piercing scream. The piercing cold of winter. A hybrid version of the Toyota Highlander employing the same technology will debut next year. I recall one moment of piercing sadness. They placed great emphasis on the individual's freedom. This is the place to get your tattoo or piercing done. The only problem with these theories is that they are entirely devoid of evidence. A splinter had pierced the skin. In a country devoid of trees, the houses turned out to be prefabricated wooden boxes. I had to pierce another hole in my belt. It really does bother me so that things have become entirely devoid of wit and creativity. I pierced my nose and ears. Our approach in the changes we made was to augment his presence. His loss left a void in the team and organization. A phantom who haunts lonely roads. The bed is a void space, a limbo where life's pause button can be pressed at will. A phantom conspiracy. The inquiry is in limbo because of the decision of the court today. A phantom bank accounts. He was left in limbo by Scottish Labour's executive, which refused to endorse his candidacy. We only had 2 days to sightsee. A precision instrument. Candidates applying for this position should be computer literate. She drove along the winding lane. The shipping lanes of the South Atlantic. You might expect God to chastise the people for their unbelief. The clock on the International Space Station will tick slower than the earthbound clock. Nothing goes on forever, change is inevitable. It's a long lane that has no turning. To circumvent the problem of determining the optimal amount of reserves. Thousands pilgrimage there every year. I hope I can circumvent the barriers I may have previously erected around my heart. The city is a hub for maritime tourism. The main facade was relatively intact. Rub a dish with a crushed clove of garlic. Oil of cloves. Clover is usually considered a weed and is fought with herbicides. Physical safety and creature comforts exact a terrible price in that regard. To cleave wood for the fire. The cloven hooves of ruminants such as cattle. Hedonist is a pleasure seeker. Property prices tumbled. The monarch's capacity to exact the obedience he commands. Her hair was a tumble of untamed curls. She can embody a peculiarly nasty blend of vicious evil and laudable good. He took a nasty tumble. After exterminating, kill off, the entire population, the soldiers set fire to the buildings. I took a tumble in the nettles. Carol longs for both love and friendship. She uses her sunny disposition to hide an inner loneliness and desire to belong. Bumped and fumbled with a hiss of breath. The mystique surrounding the monarchy. That sunny disposition is matched by a remarkably trouble-free upbringing. They went on strike in defiance of Union policy. The primary order of battle factors are composition, disposition, and strength. In defiance of all British traditions of tolerance. Attempts to salvage the ship were hampered by thick fog on Saturday night. The plaudits for the winner died down. The ablation of remnant thyroid tissue. A procedure that patients commonly undergo when being treated for thyroid cancer. She has earned plaudits across the world. The corneal surface is ablated and patients may experience for short-time discomfort post-operatively. The entire estate was enclosed with walls. Please enclose a curriculum vitae with your application. It's the largest fully enclosed shopping center. A puff of wind swung the weathercock round. The stunning star showed off her killer ABS. From these facts we can infer that crime has been increasing. His responses were remarkably candid. To infer the color of a person's skin from their typing. Not everyone appreciates your candor. What he does is simply a job requiring diligence, perseverance, and a dash of good fortune. This is an intriguing story, its setting is significant. A company that overhauls and repairs aircraft engines. The steering box was recently overhauled. Moves to overhaul the income tax system. A road layout. The author is so keen to break out of the straitjacket of conventional narrative. Doing layout for newspapers and magazines. To entomb your interpersonal center within the constricting straitjacket of certain words and formulae. A model railway layout. Instead of enabling them to cope with the situation in which they had been placed. The anguish itself became an additional disability. It consigned them to a life of permanent frustration. He consigned 3 paintings to Sotheby's. The package was consigned by a famous sporting goods company. She consigned the letter to the waste paper basket. Changing the layout of the ground floor. Peruse the manual to set up your television. I absent-mindedly gnawed on some fries while Patrick munched on his salad. He is perusing a history books. Beneath the gloss of success was a tragic private life. Please peruse our menu before ordering. He glossed the term as being a colloquial word for anger. He was never puffed up about his writing. Sensational popular fiction, replete with adultery and sudden death. A trek to the South Pole. Having said that, let us not get carried away in hyperbole and rhetoric. We trekked through the jungle. My hand is shaking as I write, and I fear that these pages will be blotted. To take a tough stand against absenteeism. He needs to weed through a vast amount of information to find a kernel of truth. Keep the seedlings clear of weeds. I have no doubt whatsoever. We must raise the level of research and weed out the poorest work. To ride on a prancing horse. At the heart of the fleshy fruit, snug within its stony kernel, lies a bitter seed. Smokers are advised to eat more fruit, as the weed can increase the risk of gastric cancer. My tiny bayweed could jump like a stag. I was weeding a flower bed. Prancing is to spring from the hind legs. The pony was prancing around the paddock. Risks of low-level exposure to environmental pollutants. He was puffed up with conceit. The effects of contamination by airborne pollutants on Arctic insects. Puffed eyelids. The end. Coming next. Session 67.